Welcome back to this special edition of the News Hour, coming to you in part at least from Auschwitz, and as you can probably see and hear, an extremely bleak and an extremely cold part of southern Poland this morning. The temperature here at the moment, we gather, about minus 12 degrees. Just bear that in mind as we now go on a tour of this death camp. Bear in mind that these are the sort of conditions the people brought here had to bear. It's the sheer scale of the place that strikes you first. In my mind's eye, I'd imagined a prison like, say, Strangeways or Wormwood Scrubs. In fact, Auschwitz and the smaller death camps that surround it take up some 15 square miles of this bleak and desolate part of southern Poland. It was along this railway track that people were brought to Auschwitz in cattle trains from all over Europe. Can you imagine what was going on in their minds as they arrived here, not knowing their fate? It's sometimes difficult to find words to describe what happened here, let alone understand it. This is one of the gas chambers where thousands of people were murdered. In fact, all told, 1.1 million people were killed at Auschwitz. Now just think about that. That's roughly the population of a city the size of Birmingham. Amongst those who perished here, 4,000 Jewish children, aged between 2 and 14, who've been separated from their parents, dragged halfway across Europe and brought straight into a gas chamber like this. Not one of them survived. What on earth did they ever do to harm anyone? And this is where they disposed of some of the bodies, the biggest mass murder of all time, killing on an industrial scale. Those who survived the gas chambers, the fit and the able, were often accommodated in either brick or wooden barracks like these. And they slept in these bunks, at least 6 up there, 6 down here, and 6 down here. Others had to sleep on the floor. Now the temperature today is minus 4 degrees, and as you can see, I'm wearing an overcoat and I'm still cold. Little wonder that many of them froze to death. There was a fire, but it was the prisoners' duty to find the fuel, and often there wasn't any. Those that didn't freeze to death were sometimes beaten to death, worked to death, or starved to death. There are 2 things about this whole experience I find very difficult to comprehend. One is that this wasn't just the work of a few deranged fanatics. 7,000 people worked here and were all, to some degree or other, involved in the conspiracy. Secondly, this didn't happen hundreds of years ago in some far-off land. It happened here in Europe, just a couple of years before I was born.
And John, people who I know who've actually been over to there and to the other death camps say that there is an eerie feeling of past horrors. Do you feel that?
Oh, absolutely, Penny. And I keep saying this, but I'll repeat it for the benefit of people who are just joining us. I mean, this is a desperately bleak, desperately desolate sort of place. And just imagine, you can see now the railway line behind me, just imagine how you would feel if you were one of those children, one of those parents, brought here in cattle trains and just dumped here in the middle of nowhere. You see your mother maybe go off to the right to the gas chambers. You see your father go to the left, you're left in the middle. What on earth went on in the minds of those, particularly those poor children, many of whom never ever saw their parents again? It beggars belief. You read books about it, you see it on television, but believe me, until you've been here and experienced it for yourself, it's just not the same at all. You have to see it to believe it.
Well, John, it's a question that I can put now to Barbara Stimler, who was just 16 when she was actually sent to Auschwitz. Good morning to you. So, John was saying, you can't imagine what a child felt. What did you feel?
It was just terrible. When I went through the gates, the 2 assessmen and Mengele, the doctor, which I did not know. I did not know where I was going. And it was very dark. They put us in 5s and counting us forever. Suddenly I can see this terrible chimney burning and fire coming out of it, and terrible smell, but who could think they were burning bodies? When they put us in 5, and when it was a little bit lighter, I could see barracks surrounded with electrifying wires, and a woman came out from one of the barracks. She didn't have no hair, no shoes, a very short dress, so I thought, this barrack is probably with women who have mental illness, not thinking that in about 1 or 2 hours I will look exactly the same. They took us afterwards to a very big, when I went through the gate, I went to the right. Afterwards, they took us to a very big room where we had to undress ourselves completely. And of course we didn't want to undress ourselves because there were men there. So they started beating us. And we had to undress ourselves. And we were walking one behind each other in a circle. And from there, they were taking women out who were thin or had any marks on their body. And I did not know what it was all about. Then we took us to a place where they gave us a shower, shaved us everywhere, and gave us a dress. When we opened the seams from the dress, it was full of dead lice. And we start marching again and put me in a Lager C and Block 30. There were banks, 5 women to a bank, squashed. We had to get up very early, about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, standing outside the block in 5s, waiting for the assessment to come and count us. Forever they were counting us to see how many of us are left still. Of course, some of the girls were fainting, we were hungry. We had a slice of bread like clay and green water to drink. Then we went back to the barracks, lying there, and it was very tough, very tough.
And did you think as the days went by, did you think that you would survive?
Never, never. But I had a bit of help, and that's what helped me to survive. First of all, I had a very nice voice, and I was singing. And one of the girls there told me that the 2 last blocks men were coming to work, and one of the men are my cousin's friend. So it was not allowed to go out from the block to walk about. Only when they took us to the toilet, which was also a barrack and a big hole. And that's how we were excused. And the dresses were shorter because we were tearing the dresses to wipe ourselves. I sneaked out one day from the block. I thought, what have I got to lose? And I called his name out. His brother came out, asking which block I was in, and that the Henrik, his name was, will come the next day. He came next day to my block. He brought me a kaftan, a little overall, a scarf for my hair, Dutch clocks, and the socks. So I was dressed and I looked like a Stubendienst, that means a cleaner. Brought me a loaf of bread, introduced me to the couple that I can sing, and from time to time she used to wake me up in the evening when she had a party.
And that actually made
a difference.
Survived.
Yes.
Now, obviously, there's so much more to your story, but sadly, we have no more time. But thank you very much, Barbara, for coming in. Thank you very much for coming in and telling us your story. And events to mark the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz can be found on the website gm.tv. Now,